So, greetings. This is Michael, uh, coming to you from South Portland, Maine, and I'm talking to my dear friend Sarah, who is located in
South Paris.
South Paris, Maine. Not to be mistaken with Paris, France, but it has lots of creative energy there. So, and Sarah's a beautiful Type 4, one of my cousins, and uh, so, we'll be talking about what Riso Hudson would call the individualist, the introspective, sensitive type, known for their capacity to sense into the depths of reality and to see both the beauty and the darkness, much like Rumi, and with that real passion towards beauty and creativity and being original and not being like an ordinary stone on the street. So anyway, that said, I'd love to hear from you, Sarah, just about what your experience as a Type 4 has been for you.
Yeah, I find what I've been hearing myself say recently is like I feel lonely in the ordinary, and and I think particularly after losing my husband, and really taking on the grief, wearing it like a cloak, leaning into it, making art around it, writing about it, and just really living in a very different world. I sort of feel like as a four, I'm most comfortable in the creative, imaginative, fantasy world, and that's wonderful. And I'm aware that I have to that important for me to catch myself if I go down too far, if I cycle down too far. So by catching myself, I go mow the lawn, or I make some bread, or I just I kind of slip back into the physical world of manifestation and I guess you could say mundane, but
Yeah,
um,
yeah. Well, so I, just want to notice that, that grief and suffering over losing your husband and how certainly my experience as a Type 4 when I've gone through intense losses is there's something about this sort of dark swamp that usually is whispering around saying, "Hey, Michael, why don't you come down and stick your foot in this swamp for a while? And if we're lucky, we'll capture you here for the rest of your life." And if a deep grief hits, how to allow myself to experience that without sort of completely getting swallowed by that dark swamp that seems to have it's like a weird gravitational pull, and there is a knowing, and it sounds like you get up and move your body and get back in your body and out of your creative mold, and so that's certainly one a powerful strategy for the Type 4 when I start to. We say for the Type 4 that they can have a tendency to um, get over identified with feelings, and that doesn't mean we're not supposed to feel, because fours, that's one of their gifts, is to be able to feel deeply. It's when that starts to run me and I'm not consciously sort of in charge of it or witnessing it, and so can you say a little bit about how you experience the emotional depths and
uh,
what you notice?
I noticed that when I am doing my art, whether that's I'm weaving or I'm painting or collaging or working in clay, I work in a lot of different mediums, that becomes a place where I feel almost like an equanimity in my body, like I'm not going down,
Beautiful.
uh, because it is very addictive for me. This melodramatic, like everybody
Yeah.
got the violins, and I mean it's like this tragic, beautiful, poignant fierce landscape that is very intriguing to me. I feel like a moth to a flame with that. And so that can be very seductive and feel very real. And so I find that when I'm creating, it's allowing my system to metabolize that in a way that is creating beauty. It's also taking me slightly out of that vortex because I'm focusing on the materials, and it also helps if I'm actually able to think of somebody, um, almost like a little bit like a channeling of energy. I think, yeah, maybe that's how to say it, is that the art allows me to channel what could otherwise really build up in the system and become very swampy and very distorted. I think the way water, when water sits for a while, things grow, and
Yeah,
it can be, there can be create a distortion. And so I like the image of movement, moving waters, clearing out, cleaning out. Yeah.
awesome. Well, and you use the word equanimity, and it sounds like you really experience a shift in your sense of your being when you're in that, which sounds very
It's very,
healthy.
very palpable since I've been in the grief, because the grief is a very heavy,
Yeah.
downward, grounding kind of experience. And so when I sit before my paints, for example, I literally feel like an opening. I feel a shift in
Uh,
particularly around my chest.
yeah, your heart
You know,
chakra, your heart.
yeah,
I
yeah.
guess
It feels
is
like
it something shifts there.
something shifts and all is well.
Well, that's beautiful because you've really, my experience of equanimity, it feels like it it runs through my heart and down into my belly somehow, and there's a kind of, and it's just like the waters are still, and it might be deep grief underneath it, but there's some way that it I don't get addicted to it, and I can draw on it, or it draws on me and comes through creativity. But sounds like that's a powerful tool for you for being present.
Mm.
Yeah. So so when we were looking at the levels of health that Riso and Hudson developed, the first three levels I think are very interesting. The first one, level one, is the inspired creator. And I'm just curious about your creativity and your inspiration and how you work with that.
Yeah, well, actually, sorrow is a very good fodder for me. It turns out, um, and yeah, I think I know that, I'm on my ninth sketchbook since Mark died, of writing and painting and collaging. And so I feel like it's allowing me to move through this process with a kind of presence and guidance. It's like a map. My art is a map through this journey of grief right now. And
Beautiful.
I'm not sure if I'm exactly answering your question, but I think that,
Oh, you're doing great.
yeah, I think that the art is just, yeah, it's been quite a companion.
Well, so when we started off, you um, had two words together, loneliness and the ordinary.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting thing. I know when I have gone through profound loss, it's almost like my identity, who I think myself to be, kind of disappears, and I'm just kind of like a stone on the street. There's like a sense of, I don't know, almost anonymity, nothingness. It's lonely, but there's something palpably real about it, and it's not my favorite place to be, but there's certainly, it's an interesting perspective when I realize just how it's almost like in relation to the rest of the world, I'm as ordinary as everybody else. There's a way that whatever my interesting ego has constructed as the unique, you know, type 4 I am, it's like that cover fades away, and it's both sobering, but it's also a little shocking. I wondered what your experience of all that has been.
Yeah, I think I'm pretty attached to that, to not being a part of the masses.
Yeah, that's okay. Well, you'll never lose your beautiful Type 4 spark, but it's an interesting thing when that is gone. It's like, oh, wow, what now? I mean, so,
Yeah,
um,
I wonder if that's why, in part, I'm both drawn to working with groups of people for the sense of community, but also I think it's that losing the loss of that quote specialness that makes it maybe a little less compelling.
Well, so that's that's the certainly one of the stories of the four. So how do you like you go and work with a group, and then all of a sudden you're kind of diffusing into everyone else, and that uniqueness isn't quite as felt, or
Yeah, and I have to really make myself engage on an ordinary level because I feel like that's otherwise I can really allow that pattern, which I don't does it doesn't feel healthy to me to run itself, and so then I'm off and I'm elusive and I all that all that stuff. And then separate, right? And then I'm separate because I'm different, but then I'm not a part of, and so I'm lonely and envious.
that's the road of the four. Now I'm lonely, and now
I don't
I
want to be a part of you, but I'm, it's like because because it's interesting, Michael, because that's a different kind of loneliness, and for me, that is really more about loneliness and solitude. I like being by myself. I sometimes prefer that because I could speak to that maybe later, but so it's a balance. Yeah, it's a balance between feeling the necessity to belong, because I think that's a basic human condition, but yet feeling either trapped or lost, like that lost sense of self. Yeah, in the ordinary kind of social construct.
yeah. Well, I notice for myself as a four, if I'm not in the best of places inside myself, I can walk into a room and just feel like I do not belong with these people. And so one part of me judges them and says these people are the most bland, mundane human beings. The angels must weep when they view them. And then I feel like I don't belong anywhere and I feel lonely. And then I actually can sense envy towards the way they've collected in their shallow, meaningless way, and then I hate them. Like I hope you have a really bad day, and then I go, wow, that's the pattern of the four. I'm just not present in my body right now, and when I'm present, I don't go through that wild fantasy world. So I wonder what if that mirrors your experience, or
Yeah.
you know, yeah, it's quite a joy, isn't it? So throughout your life as a type four, that I know for myself earlier on, that feeling like an outsider and separated from everybody, and then wanting to be a part of them, and then not liking them, and all that. That's gotten quieter and quieter as I've become a little healthier. I just wondered how you experienced your fourness, like in high school or early, adulthood, or what's that been like for you?
Yeah, and I'll just say right now that it's a process of discernment of really finding my tribe. But in high school, I was really social and just had fun and partied a lot and had a lot of friends. So it was not, I don't know, that didn't really feel. I mean, I was definitely connected to my art. So I had a like a I had a I had access to my own depths, but I definitely was very because I partied. I was just a social. Yeah.
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 So when did you begin to notice that sort of your foreignness to come on? When did that start to come online?
I mean, I think I started to notice. It's hard to say because I started drinking pretty heavily when I was in college, and I was deeply creative, but I think I isolated a little more. Um, and so and then it's hard because I did go into this whole phase of really like the underworld of some pretty heavy alcohol use and
Yeah.
um, kind of really separating from reality in a big way, I
Yeah.
think. And so it probably wasn't, I was 30 when I got sober.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And so then yeah.
Yeah. Well, that sounds similar to me. I got sober when I was 32, and of course, you know, tried and true fours have to go into the dark side just, to see what's there, for Pete's sake, so we can identify with the horror of life and have preparation for it. But what sort of brought you out of it? Was there,
And well, getting pregnant,
oh,
yeah, that was it. Was the love I had for this child in me was stronger than the love I had for alcohol.
yeah,
And so I just gradually, I mean, it wasn't like I stopped. It was just a gradual process. But by 32, I was no, I was consciously like, no more,
Wow.
nothing have my power outside of myself.
Awesome. Awesome. So, have you been fairly consistently, when when you're at your best, is creativity and doing your artwork sort of fundamental to your life, or how does it fit in?
My artwork,
Yeah.
yeah, it's the central, it's the hearth.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So, a couple other qualities that often stand out for the four when they're at their best is, we call them the self-aware intuitive, and there can be this pretty strong intuitive sense of right direction or what's going on, or a way of sort of having impressions come to them that either lead to connecting with people or starting a new project. But sometimes forests have a kind of it's not a linear path as other types might be, but it tends to be intuition driven. So what have you experienced about your intuitive
I
self?
this is like, I feel like a shaman. Like, this is a shaman life for me. It's a
Yes.
life of initiation through adversity and through love, great love and great hardship. I feel like the psychopomp, where I go in between the worlds. I travel to one and then I come back. I don't tend to, when big things happen to me, I don't know if I'm answering your question, but
Oh,
I'm just
you're
going to
doing
say that
great. Yeah, just
yeah, I tend to vacillate towards sort of a non-ordinary state of awareness, whether that's through my art or meditation or sometimes medicine journeys. But just it's like what this world holds in contrast to what I've experienced doesn't I can't integrate it with my ordinary mind, and so I'm one of I'm a traveler.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and so that the ability to sort of be out of the conventional mindset of the world sounds like it's a place that you feel comfortable and enjoy going to. That be
I am very drawn to that, and I think some of that is I mean, I could pathologize it, or I could say, I'm I'm very drawn to spirit. I'm
yeah,
very drawn to the spiritual world,
yeah, yeah.
and I like going there and actually bringing something of substance to somebody or to an experience.
Mm. So it sounds like, again, that's the idea of what we say about. It's interesting about fours. One story is that because fours are so impressionable, that impressions enter them quite easily, that sometimes the way that impression process works is it goes into a kind of an incubator, and will come out as a creative vision. Something will just pop up and so being receptive to impressions and having some kind of outlet, like journaling or painting or writing, whatever. If forests don't do that, the waters get really constipated, and then the worst case scenario patterns of the four pop up.
Yeah,
Does that sound?
drama ensues.
Say that again.
Drama ensues.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And so it's an interesting. Uh, and then there's the other, with a certain kind of presence where I actually can receive, higher impressions that come through me, and I allow me to speak or teach or create. So it sounds like that process is something that enlivens you, and that's one of your gifts. So, and so, I know. How I know, if you don't mind me talk a little bit about astrology, that you're an astrologer, and how does tell me how that works for you? And
So I think that gives me permission to go really deep with people and get paid.
hmm, two birds with one stone, right? Yeah, yeah. Okay. Anything else you want to say about that, or
I think that's part of that, almost like psychopomp. Like when I'm meditating on somebody's chart, I really am taking in the symbols, and then
mhm.
I'm holding that, I'm holding it, and then it catalyzes through me and comes back out as something to offer to somebody else, a piece of insight.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and so, I mean, I do that as a minister as well. If I'm going to marry a couple, I'm with the energy of the couple. And I think because I'm attuned, or I'm able to hold a lot of very complicated or, difficult realities, concepts, feelings, emotions, like, so somebody's died, and I've been asked to do a service for them, and I really hold that experience in my body. I mean, sometimes in a way where it's not, I can somaticize, but more and more, I just hold it in a place of allowing it to sort of cook,
Mm.
like the
Mm-hmm.
seasoning, and then offering back up. And I've
Mm-hmm.
often thought, well, not everyone can do that. Not everyone wants to go down into that little place, into that deep, dark place, and hold a difficult reality, and then be able to give it back.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting. Like sort of the image I have is like the type four, like, they're down in the dungeon. They're saying, "Come on down.
Yeah.
It's really good down here. There's some good things. You won't die, and you'll be able to escape." But
Yeah.
I actually have lived here quite a bit, and I know the territory. It's safe. Let me guide you.
Yeah. Yeah. I think being a guide is really, it's funny. I laugh with my friend Mary, who's a 7, and well, she's like, I'm up here always trying to get people to come up here. And I'm like, and I'm down here trying to get people to come down there. So we have this little tug of war with each.
Yeah, yeah. That's a great talk about contrast. The 7 and the 4, and certainly both of them have, as a 4, the 7s in my life have cheered me up tremendously, and allowed me to see that
Come up
joy is
there.
really valuable. So before, who knew?
Right.
Um,
You got to
yeah,
come up to breathe. We're mammals.
yeah,
Come up
yeah.
here.
That's right. Uh, well, so the other thing that, another quality that's often strong, and we call this level 3, the self-revealing individual, and
Mm.
often the story about the 4 is that I do a lot of introspection and wondering what's going on inside me, and where does that come from, and what does that mean, and but the self-revealing is I talk about it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm wondering, do I, because I relate to that, Michael, and so it's like, I want to be careful not to give myself away too soon, too much of myself, but I really relate to that self-revealing, because anything else feels like a lie. So no matter what's going on,
Uh-huh.
it's out. This is too much information to be.
I hear ya. I hear ya. When in my younger days, there was no restraint, and I would just, I'm being honest, and they would disappear.
It's like the Teacup Talk of God by Hafiz. Do you know
Uh-huh.
that song?
How's that? Can you recite it?
No, but I can. Yeah, it's basically like, everyone wants to kind of like sit down and have tea, but when they hear that teacup talk of God, well, they pack their bags and and that to me is very speaks to the 4. Like,
Yeah.
come over and have tea, but we're actually going into the deep end here. About that, and I might crack your foundation, but I'll try not to.
And I'll be cheered up by it. I hope you are too. Yeah. Well, that's kind of the lifeblood of the 4s, and we're talking about emotional honesty or depth, or stripping away another layer of falseness, or whatever.
It's the Mark Nepo used to say, but don't enter, don't hover, enter.
Oh, that's nice. That's nice. Yeah.
I love to enter, but I have to be careful, because I've had an experience with my husband's brother where I feel like it was a little bit of like a psychological rape. That's a harsh way to say it, but I was doing my 4ness, and I had no business. So that was a big teaching for me, because he kind of blew up at me, and it was like, oh, okay, yeah, I really have to be careful here. This is serious. This
Yeah.
is serious shit.
Yeah. 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 And I think that, to me, I've had the same growth curve of being aware. Number one, I like to just blurt it out, and it cheers me up, but it may not work for them. Are they actually in a place to hear it? Is it too much? Will it actually push them away? And as my teachers say, the question is communicating in this way at this time, does it actually assist them in opening up, or do they get scared by it? And so that, when I remember that, I'm a lot quieter than I used to be, and I don't. My tendency before was I thought everybody wanted to know about their psychological mess and what was stopping them, and they didn't. They really didn't. And somebody said, "Why don't you wait for them to ask for your help?" I never thought of that. So, yeah, I blurted. I can just think of a number of scenes where I blurted, and I could just see their face fall, and I just thought they weren't tough enough. So, sounds like some similarity for you?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So, if you were going to, let's say you had a type 4 daughter, 15, 16, 20, would you have any advice for her in terms of how to navigate these passions, or what would help her?
Mm. I let's see. What's coming to me is something about being a more of a witness presence. Like presence in and of itself is a very strong thing. Without words, without inquiry, just a kind of spiritual presence that
So,
creates safety. I think it's something about creating safety with other individuals, so that there is a connection. Yeah.
uh-huh. And so how have you cultivated that in yourself?
Well, I think that my training as a chaplain has really helped because um, it sort of puts a little focus on say less and just be more. Like yeah, and I think too, just in the process of learning over the years of what works and what doesn't work, because being connected to people is really important to me.
Yeah.
you know and so in NVC, is this a connecting statement or a disconnecting statement? And so I
Hmm.
I, I make an attempt to be aware, uh, but I may just keep, that could be sort of a rotating pattern for me through my life of like, whoops, I went to, because I, I had this is, okay, I had this experience with this couple years ago. I was marrying them. So I'm asking them all these questions and they're answering, and in my mind, I'm going, God, this is so flat. Like this is like, yeah. And then all of a sudden the male, the husband, or says to me, he goes, God, this is great. This is really deep. And that was a big teaching for me of like, what I think is deep would trash somebody. So,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
uh,
Wild. Yeah, I've had that happen similarly. Yeah, and assuming they were having the same experience I was, like, oh,
mm,
I'm just, or maybe I'm just flat today. This couldn't mean anything to them, and then they come up and say, "That was the most awesome workshop," and I go, "Really? Who knew?"
I mean, do you have that experience as a 4 of unless you kind of hit that 30 degrees under and it doesn't feel alive?
Yeah, it's a like I'm not. There's like a deadness. It feels like I'm not
You're in the
ringing
flat
ring.
zone.
I'm not ringing the bell, and then I
Yeah.
find out later that people were all abuzz, and I'll go, "Gosh, I just have to trust the process," because sometimes, well, and then there's the inner critic of the 4, and my inner critic likes to whisper, "You know nothing about what you're talking about. You're just sort of ordinary and unimportant." And if that grabs me, then it's like I can't sense how I'm landing on people. But do you notice an inner critic voice that comes up for you?
It would be like, you're just too much. And I think it's also because I'm a woman. I'm been, constru- socially constructed to be nice and be in a cage. And so I feel more
Oh,
of my wildness, and so that I have to work with that piece of like, you're too much, you're too
yeah,
loud, you're
yeah,
too,
yeah. Tamp it down, tap it down. Don't be so.
yeah, put yourself back in the cage, put your muzzle on, all that.
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
that indoctrination.
Yeah. Well,
Hmm.
it seems like you're doing pretty good in your engagement with it.
Well, it helps to have a lot of exercise, gardening, art, like ways to move that energy safely, creatively.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you pointed to something that is often a gift of the four. I really liked what you said about this idea that you look at the chart and then you sort of, it's like something kind of cooks on an unconscious level, and then impressions come up, insights, and that's one of the gifts of the four. If they're present and they know how to collect themselves and to find a way into a kind of inner stillness and then allow things to cook, that is like an answer reveals itself, or an impression comes up, and I know for me that process is interesting. Sometimes if I'm journaling, all of a sudden something just drops in. So I'm wondering if you have different ways that you've noticed that in yourself, where impressions just there it is. 4 days later, something arrives.
Yeah, and that happens all the time.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay.
But it
So
happens more when I um uh yeah, when I'm I think it has to do for me with my development of faith in the process of life.
hmm,
So to maybe want something or to hold someone, whatever it is, and then just saying and just allowing that to just allowing the space to noting that the space is necessary, the space from trying to think too much
figure
about
it
it,
out.
just
Yeah.
allowing it to kind of sift through my system like something dropping through water, and
Oh, that's
like the
nice.
bubbles that arise or the
Yeah,
download.
yeah. That's really nice. Uh, so you touched on something. Well, something came up for me around the four pattern. Is that we often say fours sometimes have an inner pattern of idealizing people or places and then devaluing it and feeling like life is disappointing me again. Like,
Yeah,
there's this awesome person, they're amazing. Oh, what a
yeah,
disappointment. Do you
yeah.
do you notice that cycle? Have you noticed that?
I do notice it, and I also notice I have an awareness of it,
Yeah.
so I can go, oh, there's
Uh-huh.
your disappointment, there's your dissatisfaction. I sometimes feel like the fisherman's wife, that story of it was never enough, and she asked for more and more and more, and so, I mean, yeah, just being aware of it changes it.
Absolutely. Just seeing it. Yeah, that's been my experience. Well, so what do you, for you, I mean, these are uh, uh, hard questions really, but uh, if you, what do you appreciate most about your foolishness?
Um, I appreciate, yeah, my insight and my connection to my solitude and my art, and that I make beautiful things, and yeah, uh, yeah.
Yeah, and who are the, fours tend to be really passionate about the people that they love,
Mm,
or passionate about the people they don't like either. It's like it can go either way. But so,
mm.
are there people in your life today that you just feel that kind of passionate, loving connection?
I mean, yes, so many people, and I think that, and I've also met this person that I feel is taking up a lot of my for fantasy energy. um, and but it's yeah, I mean, I just love people so much.
Mm,
And I feel that it's very intensified right now because of the loss and because of
yeah.
the grief and because
Mm,
of not having the physical connection every day. Mark and I were so close physically.
mm, mm,
And that is just like, I feel like a hungry wolf in an alembic,
mm,
just cooking.
mm,
So I have to really watch that in myself. It's important for me to keep that in balance and to find ways to metabolize that desire for physical intimacy
yeah.
um, through safe ways and appropriate ways. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you could always warn people and say, I'm going to have to devour you. and
And then I'd
so,
be like, be gone. And so,
right, enough of that. You're still breathing. That's a good sign. Off you go. That's just how I am today.
I
Is
know,
that,
right? Well, that's the thing, and I sort of feel like my circle's getting a little smaller, but it's getting deeper, right?
yeah, yeah.
It's, but people still are coming into my life, and so I like that. Like
Mm,
yeah, it's been nice to, it's almost like, and I think that that's also this Uranus thing that's happening for me, this awakener, but it has to do with relationships.
mhm,
And
mhm.
so some people need to go and some people need to come in.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I went to say, I'm sorry you're off the list, but it's been good. But yeah, well, that's that So it, what I always love about force is that it's sort of like wherever I'm sort of casting my attention, there's if there isn't a passion to it, then like why would I bother with you? I'm not feeling any juice, right? Or
Yeah.
any meaning, like so I'm sorry, but you're on the boredom spectrum, and you got to go find somebody else. But it's just that.
Yeah, right. And being a sexual whore too, like what was, I remember that panel that you had at the workshop, which was so well done, Michael. That was really a good component for me. But somebody, I guess maybe with self-pres or maybe social, just said how the flat they feel, right? And I
Yeah,
was like, oh my God, I can't imagine. Oh, no, but that was very insightful.
yeah, yeah. So so a sexual for is perhaps
Live
need
wire.
yeah a live wire, and likes to be uh, inspired and electrified and shocked and
Mhm.
then of course the question for me as a sexual force is can I tolerate the ordinary moments, and that's been a growth edge for me is how do I
Mhm.
learn to tolerate just mundane stuff, and so is there any mundane stuff that you notice that you bump
Oh,
up against?
I mean, right now there's a lot, Michael, because I've inherited 10 acres of gardens, and not that I don't view gardening as ordinary, but I've got to bring my wood in and mow the lawn and things that I don't mind, but yeah, they're yeah, yeah, got to do it.
Yeah,
The
awesome.
tap will carry water.
Yeah,
But that also, again, kind of going back to the beginning of what I said, that is a nice, it feels like a good balance response for my sexual for nature. It's like, okay, now I'm just going to go stack some wood.
yeah,
Got
yeah,
to get done.
yeah, yeah. I found it to be a grounding too. Occasionally, however, when I'm doing the dishes, I'll think, if I have to wash the dishes one more time, I'm going to shoot myself. I mean, come on, how many times do I have to wash the dishes?
No, and then if you think, how many more times will I have to wash them, or how many times am I have to drive up my driveway? It's like, oh God, spare me. Turn on the music.
Yeah, it just strikes me. I'll have those moments. I'll be walking in my house and I'll go, God, this is the most ordinary house I've ever seen. I got to get out of here. And then maybe the next day I'll go, oh, this is really an awesome place. But there's like a lot of hot, cold impressions that I experience around ordinary or not. So, I mean, anything pop up for you is sort of something you notice on a habitual way around, oh God, this again.
I think I do this thing called delay gratification. So if there's something I really want to do, I'll say, okay, you're not going to do that until you do the dishes or until you do the laundry or, and
Oh,
then I have a carrot.
a good strategy. Yeah. Well, what else can we? So sometimes fours are accused of being dramatic. And what do you notice? What have you experienced?
Oh, a wide range of response. Yeah.
So
Anywhere from, oh my God, to, talking, yeah, it's mostly adverse.
Like they'll say too much. That's like, oh my God.
I need my sunglasses. I need my, no. Um, yeah, eye rolling.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's okay. I mean, I wouldn't be who I am without all of it. You can't separate, I want a glass of water. Well, you got to have the hydrogen with the oxygen. You can't separate them.
Yeah.
Got to have it all. And that, that's been a teaching for me just with other people too. It's like, oh, you've got this pattern, but then you wouldn't be who you are. So
Yeah.
got to love it and
Yeah.
hate it at the same time.
Yeah. 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 Wow. Yeah. So, uh, do you have that sort of intuitive sense when you feel like people aren't being emotionally honest?
Well, what I'm going to say is what I'm really attuned to is when I feel like my energy is starting to bowl somebody over. Yeah,
Oh,
that's where I'm particularly careful. Yeah.
and so sometimes Forrest will say, I'm trying to get a point across and people aren't getting it, then I just intensify it. Because if it's almost like if I can brand it on your forehead, you'll finally get it. And then I get big, right? And then people,
And then I've taught you something and I'm the great sage. Yeah.
and here it comes, and you're just not getting it. I'm going to have to just like sink it right into your soul. And that's when, people kind of disappear or and but that impulse, I think, to communicate an emotional truth can feel so strong and immediate that I have
Yeah.
to notice, like, is this good for this person right now?
Right. Because I mean, this is ironic that, coming with such a strong energy is part of the desire to connect, and yet it can push away.
Yeah, yeah. And there's such, well, it's also like, I'm giving you my most precious jewels, and you're running. What is wrong with you? You haven't quite looked at these close enough. Here,
Yeah.
look at this.
Yeah.
And it's so you mentioned something that I think is very counterintuitive. If I develop this ability to, create or experience a stillness, sort of a contained presence, that alone can create a sense of connection with everyone without speaking a word. There's something really.
Yeah.
What is it? Eckhart Tolle says, "Stillness speaks."
Yeah.
And there's a wisdom and truth to that. There's something about not speaking so much
Yeah.
that conveys something deep that doesn't even need words sometimes. And
Yeah. Very inclusive, especially with introverts who can be very deep and so to have that quietness will draw somebody. It's just a look. It's a look. It's like, I get you. I get you.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
I
yeah,
like.
yeah. So do you feel that you're often more introverted than extroverted, or is it a blend?
I go down the middle, like I score down the middle, like
Mm-hmm.
with the Myers-Briggs.
Uh-huh.
I definitely, yeah, just score down the middle.
Yeah. Okay. So uh, what else? What other pattern? So as we're, go ahead.
Okay, well, I could
Yeah, go ahead.
get a little advice now.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, with it's the fantasy piece. Like I've noticed this, like with this person, um, I a lot of the basis of the relationship is fantasy, and that feels really like a little disturbing to me. And I had an encounter with this person where the energy felt really strong between us, and I went home thinking, it feels so out of balance, because that energy I judge was built up through the imagination, probably
Yeah,
for both of us.
yeah.
And I wanted to like drive a stake in the ground. Like I have wanted to just have a physical experience, which is kind of ordinary, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
let's go for a walk around the pond just to see if we even like to talk to one another.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And I think I appreciated that. I feel like that was a very wise thing to consider, because it
definitely.
takes me, because that whole fantasy thing is so consuming, Michael.
Well,
Oh,
it's like a drug, isn't it? It's like,
it is a drug.
oh my God.
Ah!
my bliss has arrived. It is. It's it's addictive. It can be addictive.
Yeah, it is. So yeah. So this is where I would seek counsel from any source of
Yeah,
how to really work with that and to bring it into a place of reality, or to allow me to just stay present to my life, because
yeah.
I feel like it takes me out of, yeah.
Well, I think it can be, just important to talk about it because I think the more it gets spoken about, the more you start to feel your body again as you talk about it. And I'm always noticing if I'm, you know, caught in an idealized fantasy, I'm always aware that I don't see any of the flaws.
Right, exactly.
It's like
Yeah.
I'm gonna
But
work.
well, I'm interrupting you because I don't want to forget this. I get into the fantasy of no matter what happens, we can do this. It can work. And there's something there that maybe is not real, or no, but I don't know that, I
Oh,
always
hang
feel
on just a sec. I lost you there because I accidentally turned the sound off. So say that again. There's something about like an idealization where you think no matter what, I can make this work.
yeah, because I do hold in like, oh, well, then, there's the personality and then there's habits and there's stuff like that. But see, to me, I feel like that's all um, workable, but maybe that's part of the fantasy of like, no matter what happens, we can do it, and uh,
Yes. Well,
yeah,
so as one of my teachers said to me, Michael, wait a year before you go any farther with this friend. Give yourself time to start to notice that they're a pain in the neck too, so that idyllic fantasy falls to the ground, and then you begin to see the real person. And
yeah,
at their best, they're 40% present. That's pretty awesome. So what are they like when they're the other times? Are they, so, but I think that's Forrest really struggle with that inflation
yeah,
fantasy. And it's also in the past for me has had been a sense of now I'm going to be saved from all my suffering, and I'm going to be, you're going to see me as the most awesome, and everything will be
yeah,
taken care of.
yeah.
And I've
That's
been,
like being rescued, right?
yeah, it's a kind of a rescue
Yeah,
pattern.
I really identify with that for through my whole life. Like that
Yes.
is something that stands out strongly even when I was a child. I wanted someone to come and rescue me.
Yeah. Yeah. And then when they don't, you just have to,
So bereft. It's just,
yeah, and duct tape them to the floor. It's like, you blew it, man. You were supposed to say.
now I'm going to withhold from you. Oh my God. Ah.
Well, they're great, patterns to notice. Like how many, in my younger days, I would have those kind of idealizations all the time. I think there's my soulmate. Oh, no, there's another one. Well, how can there be two? Well, there's another one. And one day I've seen three soulmates. What's that mean? And my teacher would say, you are messed up. That's all I can say. Right. Start using your creativity so you dissolve some of that fantasy stuff. Get creative, because otherwise you'll just go there. And that's been a huge discipline for me, is
Yeah.
is just to apply myself to my creativity. But you're in big change, vulnerable time, loss, and so it's interesting to notice. Well, there's that. It's like a neon sign.
Yeah.
Savior has arrived, and if you're not the savior, you're in trouble. But I'm not telling you that in advance, of course. But yeah, it's just great to notice.
Yeah.
Yeah, when beautiful stuff, and it's quite you know it's complicated in a certain way, but that's what fours appreciate, complication, and just the complexity of human beings. And I often say I'm glad there's not another four in the house, because I don't think we could bear each other. Yeah. So do you have any particular types that you find easier to be with, or is it even dependent on type?
I'm thinking that like Mark was a 9, I'm pretty sure, kind of a peacemaker. And that was really helpful anecdote to, yeah.
Calm me down.
So 7s can be fun. Yeah. Um,
Yeah.
5s, I think, can be really kind of intellectually juicy, you know. And so, I mean, I think each type has, I mean, twos probably, although I wonder about my own going to a two sometimes, but yeah, or eights, I go, then I become very meek. But I don't actually mind that because I feel strength in my meekness.
That's great. Well, you know, when you're in the presence of a dragon, you have to, you know, adjust your. Well, we're getting towards the end here. I want to make sure you've got to say everything you wanted to say. Uh, Anything extra that you wanted to add at this point?
Oh, I think we've covered a lot of ground.
All right. Well, awesome. Well, it's just really a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you.
And if you're okay with it, you know, I'll first I'll send you a link and you can go and watch yourself. But keep your inner critic at it because you've done
Okay.
an awesome job, and I'd love to be able to put it up. But
Okay.
yeah, just a pleasure to be with you. And I'm going to stop the recording right now so I can. Anyway.